All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here tonight. We're going to work on the project that's entitled Energy Flow and Ecosystems. Before we get started, I just want to go over a little bit of introductory information, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the project. With this project, hopefully, you'll be able to continue your studies with the results of cell respiration, which we talked about last week, be able to distinguish between those two types of respiration. And really, what the crux of this project is being able to recognize that respiration is responsible for the breakdown of food, and as it relates to transfer of energy as they relate to ecosystems. So that's what we're um, that's what we're looking for here today with the project. Just a little bit of introductory information, and a lot of this goes back to what has been discussed in your lesson. When you talk about the need for energy in living things, remember that everything that you get done, okay, so whether it's breathing, whether it's eating, whether it's sleeping, it requires an input of energy, okay, and it requires your body to maintain homeostasis as well. So plants and animals have to have that energy to carry out these life processes. And as energy moves and flows through an ecosystem, okay, you can trace that energy flow by means of either food chains or food webs, okay? So when we look at ecosystems as a large scale, okay, we don't simply look at just the food chain, a small linear progression of energy from green plants all the way up to higher level consumers. It's much more complicated than that, and you have to think about it in terms of the movement of energy throughout ecosystems with multiple organisms at multiple levels. Okay, it's not linear. It's very very convoluted, if you will. Arrows go from organisms that are constantly being eaten by different things. Okay, so with that, um, you look at the movement or the cycling of material in an ecosystem and the amount of energy that is required. You know that energy flows from one organism to another, but you also learn that organisms use some energy to convert it for life processes, and some of that energy is lost as heat. And that goes back to the project that you did last week when you did the respiration project. So we as higher order consumers, we eat other organisms, and of course energy, remember, energy doesn't get lost, it gets just transferred and transferred. And every time you transfer energy, there's a loss of energy, there's a loss of heat, okay. So really, when you look at it, only about 10% of the energy from the sun makes it to a producer. So the process, while it doesn't really seem very efficient, it provides what's necessary to sustain ecosystems, but really there's a lot of waste. Okay, so when you think about it, and I'm going to show you a picture here. Okay, as you move through higher levels of energy transfer, there's much less energy available, which is, if you think about it, why there's much less of those organisms on the planet. So when you compare hawks, for example, as compared to green plants, there's far less because there's far less energy for those hawks to eat. Okay, and that just kind of makes sense when you look at this diagram here. Okay, so that essentially is the process of energy flow. Now let's actually take a minute and talk about this project, okay? So, being able to identify primary producers, consumers, and predators in an ecosystems, you should be able to get an idea of how energy flows from the sun to producers to consumers, okay? So this project essentially is going to ask you to do really two things. First, you're going to make a pyramid, okay? You're going to make an energy pyramid to help understand who and what producers and consumers are. Okay, and you can do it a multitude of ways. You can do it on your own, or you can do it with the prompt that they do here. You can print out the pyramid and you can write the living things in it from this list below. So you're going to want to take these organisms here and you're going to determine if they're producers, okay, if they're consumers, or and how they relate as predators, okay? And then what you can do is you can print this out and you can put these organisms in like this if you want, or you can actually print your own make your own diagram. It's really your choice, okay? And then step two, take the plant-eating consumers who eat only producers and put them in the second level, and then put all the predators in the third level. Okay, so you're going to have in the first level, you're going to have anything that's a producer, so anything that can make its own food. In the second level, you're going to put only those organisms that are herbivores, only those that are plant eating consumers, and then all the predators are going to go in that third level. Okay, so that's part one. Part two then is you're going to answer these two questions, and you can answer these two questions on the Word document that you use, or you can write it down below. But you're going to answer, were there more producers than consumers? And more consumers than predators. Okay, so that's just a simple answer of being able to determine the numbers in the pyramid. And then two, it asks, a mouse eats 100 times its own weight in grain in a lifetime. You can see that plants must produce a great amount of food for just one mouse. What do you think would happen if grain were no longer available for a mouse to eat? How would it affect the organism in your ecosystem? So you need to think about the relationship that we discussed in terms of energy transfer when I showed you that picture, and how it relates to mice, and how if the grain were becoming more scarce, if the food supplies were becoming more scarce, how would that affect the mouse? And then if it negatively affected that mouse, how would it then affect other organisms who depend on mice in that ecosystem? Okay, so that's how you're going to think about it from this perspective. So that's the project on energy flow and ecosystems. There is no number of words how you have to write it. It's just, can you answer the question effectively here? If you have any questions or problems, I'm in the VO this week. I encourage you to come on in, and we'll be back here next week, and we're going to shift gears and move into another unit to talk about another project. With that, I hope you have a great week, and look forward to creating another one back here next Monday for you to use on your next project. Have a great week, everyone.